more than 24 red states now limit access to transition medical treatment. And public opinion is actually trending in the opposite direction that these advocates were pushing for. Fewer Americans today than 2 years ago say they support allowing children to undergo gender transition treatment, according to the Public Religion Research Institute.
Enjoy the decline, people. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks is calling out trans activists for their aggressive stance against ordinary people and for failing to take the perfectly normal concerns of ordinary people into account. And oh boy, the fans of the Young Turks are not having it. They're letting rip in the comment section of these videos on YouTube. They're calling her transphobic. They're calling her a TERF. They're calling her every name under the sun. A grifter, all the usual insults. But to be fair, some of the Young Turks community do seem to have a bit of common sense and are sticking up for Anna Kasparian. So let's get into this video and see where it goes on this sensitive and controversial topic.
Shows that Americans actually seem to be growing less empathetic to the transgender cause. But what's behind it? What's going on here? Well, some activists and movement leaders think that it is due to the transgender movement's confrontational and accusatory approach. And I'm not saying that. This lengthy piece published in the New York Times this week really did delve into it. So on social media in particular, some of you might have seen time and time again, like advocates for the cause being pretty aggressive. And look, it comes from a good place. This is just about the tactics, right? They're aggressively going after anyone they see as like stepping out of line, saying anything that might be deemed insensitive toward the trans community. For example, after a Democratic congressman defended parents who expressed concern about transgender athletes competing against their young daughters, a local party official and ally compared him to a Nazi cooperator. Okay, and a group called Neighbors Against Hate organized a protest outside his office. But look, the example that was detailed in this...
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah, just ordinary people who have concerns about where this situation is going, especially when it affects children, of course, are being called the usual bad names, called Nazis, Nazi collaborators, fascists, transphobic, and all that. All the usual insults that the activists, the leftists, the liberals try to push. It's just part of the ongoing campaign. It's been going on for decades now to destroy the basic building blocks of Western society, starting with the family.
Piece that really bothered me is the one I'm about to detail, okay? So last week, as we all know, Nancy Mace, and she's continued it like this week, like she's engaging in this really disgusting harassment campaign against an incoming transgender member of Congress, first openly transgender member of Congress to, serve in the House. And her name is Sarah McBride. And just preemptively off the, right after the election where Trump proved to be successful, partly because of airing an ad about Democrats' support for transgender people.
Ooh, have to stop here. I don't really follow these campaigns that closely because I'm in Europe, as you know. I just look on globally and take a sort of overall view of these American election campaigns just because it's like a circus. But that ad was a brilliant ad. I think it came right near the end of the campaign. Something like, Kamala Harris is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you. I think that's what it was, basically what it was. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant rhetoric.
You have Nancy Mace try to capitalize on that, try to kind of piggyback off of that. And that's why I believe she's been attacking Sarah McBride pretty aggressively. But you would think the transgender community, or at least the activists, would support Sarah McBride and want to protect her. But that, unfortunately, has not been the case. In fact, they are saying that she is a voice for her constituents rather than a voice for the transgender movement. And then,
yeah, that's the way it should be if she's a congressperson.
They accused her of capitulating to the right. She has done no such thing at all. Okay, the fact that now she's getting this kind of hate from activists really upsets me. But look, that kind of strategy also doesn't really seem to be working. It's actually been pretty counterproductive for the transgender community. More than 24 red states now limit access to transition medical treatment.
What is transition medical treatment? Is that mutilation? Is that what you're talking about? Is that mutilating the bodies of children by giving them either medicine, so-called medicine like puberty blockers, hormones, that sort of thing, to completely change the natural chemical balance of their body and just disrupt the natural growth process? Does that include mutilation, where, yeah, they're engaging in sex change operations on children? I don't think it should be allowed anyway, sex change operations, frankly, for anybody. I think that goes completely against the Hippocratic Oath, and any doctor doing it should be struck off, as far as I'm concerned.
And public opinion is actually trending in the opposite direction that these advocates were pushing for. Fewer Americans today than 2 years ago say they support allowing children to undergo gender transition treatment.
Fewer Americans? I can't believe any Americans support that. That's just outrageous.
According to the Public Religion Research Institute, I will say the Public Religion Research Institute very clearly would have a bias. So I would take their data with some grain of salt. But nonetheless, you kind of see it when it comes to public opinion. So I remember in 2016, when Republicans were trying to make the bathroom issue a big deal, the majority of Americans weren't buying it. The majority of Americans are like, let's just stop harassing transgender people. It's the bathroom. Like, there's stalls. Everything's going to be okay. I do think it gets a little tricky, though, when it comes to other, gender segregated or sex segregated spaces like a women's locker room and all of that. I don't want to get into the details, but like when it comes to the bathroom, most Americans were on the side of allowing transgender people to use the bathroom that they identify with. That's kind of changing now. I'm actually seeing a lot of support toward Nancy Mace and a lot of backlash toward the trans community. A 2024 YouGov poll found that 36% of Americans say societal acceptance of transgender people has gone too far. And that's actually a 7 percentage point increase since 2018. And numbers like that have led to some people rethinking their strategy.
Yeah, you might want to rethink your strategy if your strategy consists of attacking the vast majority of people in a country and calling them bigots because they won't be dragged along with your madness. Yeah, you might want to rethink your strategy. And I've seen too lots of evidence, and even in comments under this particular video, that gay people, gays and lesbians, they're completely against this whole rabid trans ideology and this trans activism. It hurts them because they've been caught up in it. This LGBT, well, yeah, LGB now has a T at the end of it. It's like they don't want any part of it. A lot of them, they don't want any part of it. They just want to live their lives. Everybody wants to live their lives, but let's face it, to have a functioning society and any kind of cohesive society, you need a baseline, ordinary, normal. You need to know what the norm is, what the normal is. And yeah, there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be, people who are different, people who don't fit in. But to have a functioning society and a cohesive society, the vast majority of people have to fit within the norm. That's just the way it is. Otherwise you're going to get what we see happening now, and that is the decline. One of the many things that has led to the current decline of the United States and the West in general. It's not just the United States, but of course, where America goes, Europe follows. And I'm in Europe, and it's happening here too.
A lot of progress. I think it got to the trans stuff, and the messaging and the aims became a little bit more aggressive because there was like, all right, we kind of won all of these victories, right? And I think what we're seeing is a sort of retrenchment from that. I want to say, first of all, just like on this and many issues, like my principles are kind of the same. Like, I don't think you should be able to deny a trans person a job, a way to work, because they're trans. You can't deny them housing because they're trans. You can't deny them healthcare because they're trans. Like, this is just, these are the basic pillars of civil rights, right?
They have those rights already. Everybody has those rights. And yes, people do get denied things at different levels for various bigoted reasons, because that's just the way people are. If you're renting out your house, you can decide who to rent it to. Sorry, perhaps you can't say out loud that it's because, they're trans or because they're of a certain ethnic background, but you can just not rent it to them, right? You do have there is a certain amount of freedom. That's the whole point of freedom of association, freedom of whom to do business with.
right?
Mm-hmm.
However, on an issue like trans people in sports, when like, basically 70% of the country are like, well, we already separate women and men's sports already. How am I a crazy person for thinking we should just keep it that way, even for trans people? Like the idea that those people are foaming at the mouth, bigots who want to string trans people up. I just don't think that's an effective message. I think this, I think it just needs to be demonstrated again, more education and just a more willingness to like meet people where they are and not assume every single person you meet is going to have the views on trans issues as everybody from your freaking liberal arts college. Like it just doesn't work like that. And again, I say this up here all the time. If you think that 70%, like you're on the other side of a 70+% issue, if your answer to that is like that 70% of the population are complete crazy scumbag idiots who I need to
Mm-hmm.
berate at every turn, you're just going about this all wrong. I will never tire of saying that.
Yeah, and look, let's remember how the gay community won over the hearts and minds of Americans. It took a tremendous amount of patience. It
Mhm.
took, like almost like a public education campaign so people could actually familiarize themselves with.
Or a public propaganda and brainwashing campaign, depending how you want to look at it. Yeah, I think most people, gay people, for example, have existed forever. We know this. That's not the problem. The problem is not the existence of gay people. I mean, it is for some people, but in general, most people are kind of live and let live types. The problem comes when you try to insist that the the outliers, the non-normal types, because let's face it, being gay is not normal. The norm is to be heterosexual. The norm is, you know, going back to our basic biology, is for males and females, men and women, to get together and to have children. So what is gay marriage even a thing? Yes, I know legally it's a thing in many countries. The country where I live in Western Europe, legalized gay marriage pretty early on, actually. But frankly, I don't think it is a thing. For me, marriage, for example, has a specific meaning, and it is a man and a woman getting, joining forces before God, now before the state. But what does that mean? Specifically to have a family, to start a family. That is a marriage. If you want to have, some sort of civil partnership to show before the law that you are partners and you're gay, okay, fine. I don't even think it should be called a marriage, personally, but some people would call me a bigot and a and a reactionary just for saying that.
Gay people in this country. But more importantly, they made an effort to like make clear like we're not a threat, we're just like everyone else. So I think that the patience is a difficult thing to have. I am an impatient person. And when I feel that I've been wronged or in whatever way discriminated against, whether it's because I'm a woman or whatever reason, you do feel that urge, that instinct to get defensive, to lash out. But you have to kind of think about what the bigger picture is and how this is really a persuasion campaign. And when your first line is to attack the person who isn't fully on board immediately, well, then you've just lost someone who.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, it's a persuasion campaign, and the American people and people in the West have been persuaded of many things. Just because they were persuaded still doesn't mean it's right. And I personally, not just on the trans issue or the various gay issues, but on a lot of issues, we have gone down, the West has gone down the wrong path. And the only way to fix it is not just to add on more persuasion, just persuade everybody it was the right path. The way to fix it is to go back up the wrong path to the fork in the road and then go down, back up the wrong path to the fork in the road and then go down the right path after that. You know, sorry, that's just the way it is. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of gnashing and wailing and gnashing of teeth, and a lot of people are going to get angry, but that's the only hope. Otherwise, this whole thing is just going to fall apart. So let me know what you think about all this in the comments. It really helps if you leave a comment. It's good for the algorithm. In the meantime, like and subscribe, also good for the algorithm, and it helps me continue growing the channel and continue making content for you.